indigenous languages. I would here mention that Xhosa, Zulu, Swazi and Ndebele are mutually intelligible dialects of one language in the way that, for example, Swiss German, Bavarian German and Plattdeutsch or Low German are all mutually intelligible dialects of one language. Similarly, North Sotho, South Sotho, Tswana are all mutually intelligible dialects of one language. And in that sense, South Africa's only got 4 black languages, Tswana, Nguni, Venda and Tsonga, plus English and Afrikaans. So we've got really 6 languages over there. There have been experiments in that, for example, in about 75 schools, textbooks have been translated up to grade 6, and there the results have been that the pass rate has leapfrogged from 20% to over 60% of all the school children. So that shows the importance of following the path of, say, Japan, Korea and China in translating thousands of engineering and science books out of English into the native languages there, with the priority being on school children. At the University of the Western Cape, I did experiment for a few years when I was head of department in having the tutorial guidelines and similar tutorial notes translated into Afrikaans and Xhosa alongside English, and having the exam question paper set trilingually with each of the questions in 3 languages to prevent confusion, and that certainly helped progress quite a bit. In 2016, the formerly Afrikaans University of Stellenbosch and the formerly Afrikaans University of Pretoria are starting to develop first-year undergraduate lecturing notes in Xhosa for the University of Stellenbosch and in North Sotho and Tswana at the University of Pretoria. I have also attended a demonstration by an associate professor of engineering from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, where he demonstrated for us a lecture he gives on hydraulic engineering in Zulu, and then after the lecture explained the linguistic principles for which he invented words for concepts such as pressure and density out of word roots in Zulu. So there have been some attempts at trying to upgrade the use of indigenous languages. It has not here been a big political issue for the first 2 decades of democracy, for the reason that the apartheid regime, like very ironically the Soviet Union under Stalin, maximized the use of linguistics for divide and rule at the levels of schools. So this discredited linguistic nationalism or linguistic ethnicities among the liberation movement, because they saw it as done by the evil regime they were opposing. But we do not suffer from, for example, the political paranoia of Turkey about suppressing the Kurdish language, or Algeria at suppressing the Berber language, Tamazight, as seen as treason and secession. And very recently I noticed Turkey has granted permission for schools to apply to teach the Kurdish language without being murdered on the spot for that. And Algeria, very, very grudgingly after the Berber Spring of 1980, in 2002 recognized Tamazight as a national language, although not yet an official language, it remained Arabic. And just this year, 2016, has now acknowledged Berber as an official language alongside Arabic, although it says Arabic remains the language of government. And it's also given permission for private TV and radio stations to broadcast in Berber instead of Arabic, and schools have permission to teach Berber as a subject at grade school level there. Now, South Africa, we've never had that problem because from the dawn of democracy, our constitution has enshrined on paper the languages as having equal status, but everything depends on the budget that is allocated to translate school books in it. The state TV, for example, has Channel 1 shared among the 4 Nguni languages, Xhosa, Zulu, Sotho, Swazi. Channel 2 is Scottish in North Sotho, South Sotho, Tswana and Afrikaans. Channel 3 is English. So it needs to devote more attention to the resources to provide additional channels for the native languages. We have endangered languages like the Native American languages. At the moment, Korana is probably spoken by only 2 living persons in their 90s over there, and there are other languages spoken by less than a dozen persons among the Khoisan family. Nama is of course spoken widely in Namibia, although very rare in South Africa. There are a few other languages like Mu spoken by less than a dozen persons, and the government has not put the resources into preserving endangered languages that, for example, the government of India does, where endangered languages get a huge allocation of funds for researchers, for academics, for being put down in writing, what is the word, to have an official orthography for them, and so on.
To preserve the...
Yes, to ensure the language is preserved. I'm afraid, like in Britain, there are still Welsh survives as an official language. There are 3 villages in Scotland which still speak Gaelic, but the extinct Cornish dialect is now only spoken by a hobby society in Cornwall, in the way that, for example, Esperanto is spoken by hobbyists. So the revival of Korana, for example, is going to be done purely by hobbyists with state support, if at all.
It becomes like Latin.
Yes.
Without the academic.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Are there any other points that you'd like to make? Anything else that you'd like to say?
Offhand, I think we've covered all the really important crisis topics over there. I would say that South Africa has a very robust multi-party democracy with very robust speech and a robust freedom of the media, and these are incredibly important institutions in preserving democracy. That you've got strong opposition parties with very committed loyalists who see this as a lifelong loyalty over there. They have a structure of branches of membership, of provincial structures. There's a large measures of internal party democracy in that party members vote for the provincial and national leaders of their political party, and this is important too. I should mention the United States parties are perhaps almost unique in the world in that they don't have a membership list and the right of the party to expel people who disgrace the party or have different views in it. And the freedom of the media, this is very important in exposing both corruption in the government as well as, of course, the problems of torture and assault by the police. South Africa has, I should mention, one of the highest rates in the world of people being shot dead by the police per 100,000 members of the public. The Black Lives Matter campaign of the USA would certainly apply to South Africa too. But unlike the USA here, we also have about the world's highest rate of police being shot dead by criminals. We also have the world's highest rate of police committing suicide. So signs of stress there, the necessity to demilitarize the police, to have very widespread training of evidence-based methods of prosecution rather than confession-based methods of prosecution. We do have an independent police investigative directorate which is designed to investigate torture and assault by the police, but there is a need for huge workshops at sensitivity training to reorientate the police away from the old police state methods and procedures. This is an ongoing challenge. Another one is enforcement of the Domestic Violence Act of 1998. 1998 was the peak year of gender reforms. For example, every police station is supposed to keep a register of all complaints of wife beating laid by members of the public, and where a woman is in danger of being murdered by a husband, a lover, or other male person, the police are required by statute to accompany the woman to her place of residence, to guard her with their firearm while she packs her belongings and then flees to a battered woman's refuge, because the danger of women being murdered by their husbands or intimate partners is highest when the wife batterer realizes the woman is actually leaving him permanently. Now there, this statute is not being enforced, and at 3/4 of police stations there is at least one policeman who himself is facing charges of wife beating. So the importance of gender reforms to a highly masculinist and a highly militarized police force is now long overdue. It exists on paper, but it needs to be implemented. I should mention that under apartheid, the police force was 99% male, with women being used only in jobs such as typists. Under democracy, the ANC has made phenomenal efforts to recruit women as police officers, to recruit women as prosecutors so that rape cases are taken seriously, and to recruit women as judges so that rape cases are taken seriously. And the gender dimension of affirmative action is often overlooked because of the color dimensions of affirmative action. But with regard to retraining the police force for methods appropriate to a democracy, there's a need for very much more determined and much more widespread efforts to be made. Perhaps I should add that appendix to the thing there. Then too, of course, as Americans know very well from Snowden, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, and fierce civil campaigns to oppose phone tapping, letter opening, email reading, these are permanent campaigns to roll back overreach by securocrats, and that is just as important an issue in South Africa as in the United States or the European Union. We've recently had a case, for example, where an NGO called the Helen Suzman Foundation, which is bringing a string of test cases against different sections of the police, has just had a burglary where all its computers were stolen but no money was stolen. So this is obviously from persons who were too lazy to apply for search warrants. Interestingly, it also means that they lacked the digital skill of hackers to hack in the computers with the spyware called file grabbers and steal all the files by remote control. They had to do it old-fashioned style at gunpoint by a physical break-in. Snowden pointed out that the National Security Agency has a software that if he typed onto his screen any email address in the world, all the email from that person jumped up on the CIA's monitor.
Your mention of women in law enforcement and the domestic violence question reminded me that I don't know if South Africans are aware, but the Pistoria case with a woman judge went around the world. This was one of the few South African stories that did get reported everywhere. However, to go back to something earlier that you mentioned, the comparison of the nature of political parties in South Africa and the United States made me curious to ask whether there is any mention of political parties in your Constitution.
Yes, the political parties come into the Constitution in this way. An individual cannot stand for parliament or the provincial legislatures. An individual is very unlikely to win, but may stand in the United States elections. For example, Bernie Sanders was an independent for quite some time. Now, what happens in South Africa's elections is that each political party must submit to the Independent Electoral Commission a list of its candidates ranked in order by that political party. Then names on that list will be declared elected from the top down, depending upon the proportion of votes that political party gets. So in that way, political parties do have official status in the Constitution. Of course, an individual, I suppose, could found a one-man political party and in that way submit a list to the